Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Faith Over Fear. So, we are excited because today's episode it's something that at least I personally can relate to a lot, and we're going to be talking about healing and staying healed. So as you guys heard in our previous episode, we took a month and a half off so we can be able to rest and be able to kind of like get closer and just kind of let God give us what we needed so we can be able to continue on with this podcast. And so I kind of mentioned a little bit that I feel like me personally, I was going through so much in that time period that it was just perfect that God wanted us to kind of have that rest, because for me, I went through a situation, a really, really hard situation where it broke me spiritually and physically at that moment, where I was literally on the floor in both aspects, physically and spiritually. And so taking this month off, I feel like it was in a way God wanted me to kind of like heal, wanted me to kind of like just have a refresh, having him clean my cup, having him pour out to me. And during that time we had many events, in our local churches and also in our district. And so it was just perfect timing. I was like, whoa, that's so cool that during this healing process and during this rest time, there was just so many events that we can go to and let God pour in. And so I kind of want to get started with just, saying that there's going to be moments in your walk where you will be broken. There's going to be moments where it just feels that there's no way out, but God is the way out. God is right there whenever you feel that you're on the ground, whenever you feel that you're surrounded by darkness. God's hand is literally right there extended for you to hold on, and he will pick you up. And that was something that I went through, something that I never thought that I was going to go through, because I kind of mentioned a little bit with, friends and mentors that I was speaking to during that time, where it's like I kind of realized that there's moments in your life where you feel that you're comfortable, where you feel that you got this. There was a moment where I was like in this aspect, I was like, oh, I got it. I don't have to worry about it. I'm good. And sometimes we let go of our like armor and we kind of put it aside because it's like, oh, I'm okay. At least that's how I felt. I didn't realize it at the time, but afterward and kind of like analyzing things, I was too comfortable in that situation that I kind of like stopped taking care of it. And so the enemy crept in because I let a door open, I let a window open. So he went in, and obviously what did he do? He filled me with lies. He tried to destroy me, and he tried to rob me of my relationship with God. And at the time, you just kind of like ask yourself, like, why is there trials, why is there tribulations, why is there moments where sometimes we have to break in order for us to be restored. And now after this process, I feel closer to God in a different way. Like now I feel like me and God is just kind of like it's just now raw. Like it's just kind of like, obviously it was raw before, but it's in a different way. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's just kind of like whenever I sing a song, whenever I pray to him, it's just kind of like I'm like, whoa, like these words like have power. Like you're living it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, yes, obviously you sing how good God is. You sing that, he can conquer anything. But whenever you live him conquering something in your life, you say it with experience and you say it with boldness now.
Yeah.
And so that's something that that's how my relationship is now, And so, I guess you can say, like, I wanted to speak about this topic because it can happen to any of us. It can happen to someone that's trying to seek God for the first time, someone that has been in the walk for a couple years, to someone that has been in a walk for many years. That it can happen where the enemy creeps in and he tries to destroy you. And like obviously there's certain situations, like my situation, it could have been avoided, but I feel like that's how it started. The lies started to creep in, where it's just kind of like, God is taking too long. You need to do something about it. You need to feed your desires. Like, don't let God hold you back. Like, it was just kind of like those type of moments. And it does feel a little weird talking about it because obviously, like, it could be like a little scary saying that I failed. Like it can be a little scary that I say that I failed, but I want to be honest because I don't want people to think that we need to be perfect to be in this walk.
Yeah.
And there was many times where I told God, I'm not worth it. I'm not worth it. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. But in those moments of failing God, in those moments of brokenness, being in his house, being in his presence is where you do need to be at.
Yeah.
And that's something that God had to give me that realization. But I would say, like, to be able to, I'm not going to say, like, oh, I pray for things to be avoided. I just pray that during those trials, during those moments, your faith to not dismay, like for your faith to not go away, and for you to think that you need to get away from God instead of getting closer to him. And that's something where I realize, like, being on the other side, I'm like, I feel good because I'm like, for some reason, it just feels that I needed to, like, I didn't need it to go through this. I feel like God turned it around, just like I always say, God turned it around and is making it for great, that now I can be able to relate to other people that are going through that situation.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't want to talk about it in the church because they're like, they don't know what it feels like. They don't know what I'm going through. How can they relate? Like, they're just going to judge me. They're not. And so for me, going through that certain situation, like, I can relate to them, and for them to feel comfortable talking about it in the church, because instead of getting advice out with their friends, where they're going to talk to people where they think they won't get judged, they're going to get the wrong answers.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to speak up and say, like, we need to be open to whatever anybody brings into the table.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, I'm super grateful to God of putting me the mom that I have, putting me the friends like Crystal, that I'm able to be open with them, and they see me the same. They, instead of like judging me and pushing me away, they're just kind of like encouraging me to keep on going, to making me realize, like, hey, you're still human and everything has a purpose. And for me, I think the beautiful thing is that, like, even though this happened, God still pulled me out from this situation. Like, he could have left me there, and by him pulling me out, it just shows that he has something for me.
Yes.
So I can't let go of that. And so that's why I kind of mentioned, in the previous episode, like, my relationship with God is just kind of like, it started out as friends, and now it's starting out as like a father and daughter. Now it's a father and daughter relationship. So that's why, just like your dad and just like your family, like, even though you fail them, they're still your dad, they're still your family. So that, it doesn't make them like disown you or anything like that. And that's the same thing with God. Like, God doesn't disown you. God doesn't say, like, oh, you're not my daughter anymore, you're not my son if you fail this. Like, no, he's just kind of like, here I am. That's why I died on the cross for you, because I knew you were going to fail. I knew that you were going to have broken moments. I knew that you were going to need the Holy Spirit. You were going to need that coverage to be able to get healed and stay healed. And so that's why, like, I want to talk, that's why I emphasize staying healed, because sometimes we get healed, but sometimes we go back to what broke you. And so in my walk, like, even though I knew that it was wrong, I couldn't let it go. Like, I just could not let it go. Like, I just physically couldn't. One day I told God, I was like, God, I know this is wrong, but I can't let it go. So, help me. I literally told him with tears. I told him with rawness, and I was honest with him. I was like, I don't want to let it go, and I can't. And that's whenever his hand came into the situation and he pulled me out, and he was like, kind of like giving me that reassurance of, like, whenever there's a moment where you can't, just let God, and then he intervenes. And that's what he did for me. He intervened and saw that I physically couldn't do anything. And so he intervened. He pulled me out of that situation. But whenever you get pulled out of a situation, obviously you're still human and you still have to go through those emotions. I whenever I was finally out, I felt hurt. I felt pain, and I was very uncomfortable because it was pulling you out of what the flesh desired. It pulled you out of like what made you happy at the time, what gave you joy at the time. So just kind of eliminating that out, it's hard. And so that's why many people stay in their situations
Yeah.
because they don't want to go through that process. They don't want to go through the process of taking away what brought them joy at that moment, you know? And so there was moments where I wanted to go back. There was moments where I was like, you know, like, God help me, but I feel like it's good that I felt every single emotion.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you may think like, God, why are you letting me feel this way? Like, shouldn't you be taking this pain away? But it's like, no, it's part of the process. You know, it's part of getting healed, you know. And one thing that I loved about Crystal, because I told her, I was like, I'm in this moment where there's no words to God, only tears. And God texted, I mean, Crystal texted back saying, God hears tears as well, or God, yeah, God hears tears as well. And it's something where it's just like, whoa, it's true. Like in that moment, it was only tears. Like I didn't know what to say. Like I didn't know nothing. It's just, you're just like in a shock whenever something hurts you so bad. And so yeah, you know, but what I like is that I would say whenever you are going through that situation, you have to be super strong. Like you have to, what I did in that moment, I put a worship song, one that kind of like takes you to his presence. And then I talked to my mom about it. I was very open with her. And then from there, you just have to be open with God, you know, just, you know, going to him, trying to distract your mind. That's also another thing as well. Keep feeding yourself with the word, fasting as well, because sometimes whenever you let a certain situation in, it's because you're lacking something. So it's just kind of like having to let God just like work in you. But I would say also another thing is not looking back.
Yeah.
Like that's the number one thing. Don't look back. There's going to be moments that even though you're out of the situation, there's going to be moments where you're going to remember, those thoughts are going to creep in, those memories are going to creep in, the enemy's voice is going to try to creep in, but you have to endure those 5 minutes of pure intense pain and say like, no, I'm not going to go back to what broke me. I can't go back to something that God healed me from and just to go back to that place again. Like it just didn't make sense. And then I think I told Crystal about this, but a story came into my mind, which was Lot and his wife, whenever they were escaping the city that God was trying to take them out from. So he told them, don't look back, because if you look back, you're going to turn into a pile of salt or sand. So what happened is they were running, but then his wife turned around, and surely enough, she turned into a pile of sand or salt. And he had to kind of like just hear it because he couldn't turn around. He just had to keep on going, you know? And that's something that God put into my mind, where it's like, it's true. Like if you turn around to your situation, you could die spiritually or physically, you know? So it's just kind of like, no, like I remember there was many times where I'm like, ugh, I kind of want to look back, but God is like, no, it could literally kill you spiritually or physically. And so I was like, okay, let's keep on going. And so yeah, you know, another one was that we went to a conference called Awakening Conference within our district, and there was this one preaching that I loved, that it was talking about the lion. I remember how we had a preacher from Australia, and he was saying that in the zoo that he went to, there was lions that you can go inside the cage and take pictures with them, pose with them, pet them. Like you could literally just be there with them. And so he asked the zookeeper, like, how do you do that? How are you able to kind of like control them in that aspect, you know, because their nature is that they're dangerous, you know, they can't be around humans because they can devour anything. Their nature is to, you know, very a strong animal, you know? And so they said that as soon as they're born, they take them away from their mom, and they give it to a dog to breed and to technically raise, you know? So as soon as they're born, they take them away from who their actual parents are and take them to a dog. So whenever there's a people in the cage and the lion starts to act how it's supposed to act, the dog barks and it scares the lion, and so that makes it return back of being scared, of being obedient, of having to stay still whenever there's someone there. So imagine a lion is scared of a dog, you know? And so I'm just kind of like, whoa, that is crazy how that happens, you know? And so he brought it into our lives, you know. He was like, sometimes that's how we are as well. You know, we are children of God, that God has given us the authority to rebuke, to have to stand in boldness, because we're standing in victory. Whenever Jesus died on the cross, we became victorious, you know. So sometimes the enemy tries to take us away from our true authority, and he starts to bark at us. And so sometimes by barking is him telling us lies, like we're not worthy. So he tries to take us away from our authority, and he tries to tell us like we're not worthy, that we shouldn't go to God, that this should be killing us, you know. And so that's why there's so many thoughts of, like, you know, if I could say, like suicide thoughts. That's where there are thoughts of like wanting to go the easier route and just taking substance to forget things, because whenever we go through a situation, we try to, like, you know, go around it, but sometimes we have to go through it. Most of the times we have to go through it in order for us to be able to heal. And so that's why, like, whenever he said that, like, that our true identity is children of God, and once we remember that, then we'll be able to act as such children of God, you know. But whenever the enemy comes and starts barking at you, so imagine a dog starts to bark at you and you're scared of it, it just makes you act how you're not supposed to act. It makes you act out of control. Like, it makes you you start acting what's not your nature, you know. And our nature is not to be sad, it's not to, you know, let things of this world dominate us. Our true nature is to know our authority, which is God, and to live as such, as children of a king, you know. And so through my process, every time I feel like my thoughts want to go back to that, or I start feeling sad, I shake it off, because it's like, no, this is just the enemy trying to bark. So let me remember who I am. And so then I start, you know, my thoughts just go back to God, starts, you know, glorifying God and all that, you know. But it's just crazy that that this is part of my walk. But I also feel very blessed, because now I feel blessed to who I can be able to help out, you know, because trials will always be there. And for me, I love to help. So if there's anyone that I can help, then with my, you know, testimony and all that, then I could, you know, I would definitely be able to do that. But it's just like, that's why sometimes God puts us through certain situations, so we can be able to relate to each other and be like a helping hand to other people. But
That's true. Something you said that sometimes we don't want to go through the process, you know, and I feel like that happens a lot. Like, we stay in a specific place because we don't want to go through the process, because we know that the process is going to hurt, you know. And it's crazy how that happens to us, you know. But the thing is that going through the process, it's what's going to mold you, you know, it's what's going to help you grow, you know. But we have to be willing to sacrifice our desires, you know. We have to be willing to sacrifice this thing that we want so much, even though we know that it's not from God, you know. And sometimes we're not willing to, you know, and that holds us back. And I don't know why it really just stood out to me, like, you didn't want to go through the process, you know, but you did go through the process, and now look at you, you know, like, it was for the better, you know. And it's crazy. Like, go through the process, you know. God will be with you every step of the way. He's gonna hold your hand, and he's gonna be there, you know. So don't fear, you know. And it's also crazy how you were saying about I said crazy how you were saying about the dog. Like, that story really stood out to me too, you know. And it's crazy how the devil can keep us bound, you know. Like, a dog barking at a lion is insane. Like, we are children of God, you know, like, we need to walk in that authority, because he has given us that authority, you know. And I feel like sometimes we're scared to walk in that authority. And it makes me think of, like, when we receive the Holy Spirit, we literally receive power. Like, he is power, you know, and he's living in us. Like we need to walk in that boldness and that authority because he has given that to us, you know. Like, why are we so afraid? You know?
So remember, like, you guys are lions, like you guys have authority. So if there's anything that you feel that you can't live without, yes, you can. The only thing we can't live without is God. He is literally, like, there's this one song that says that take everything from me except your presence, because that's the one thing that we can't live without, because that's our nature, that's our creator, you know. So that's why, you know, everything else is just secondary to God, you know. Family, a husband, a wife, a job, everything is 100% secondary. What we truly need to hold on to is God's presence. That's what we can't live without. Because I remember that week, the following week I was busy every single night. Like, I had something to do every single night, and one of those nights was actually Crystal's birthday. And then
22.
I know. And then from there, I think that following weekend we celebrated my pastor's birthday as well. And then after that week, I kind of realized, and I was like, whoa, like, it's so, like, I'm happy to be living because I'm living these experiences, you know, being able to, I don't know, like, it's just kind of because the enemy tells you that he lies to you and makes you think you can't live from this. You can't.
He wants
go
to
past
steal the joy.
Yes,
he wants to kill you, you know, kill, steal, and destroy.
Exactly.
It's crazy. I feel like
that the devil made me feel that I couldn't get through it. You know, like in those moments, he makes you feel that you can't go through it, that this is it. And so by me pushing that, I got to celebrate those beautiful moments. And if I would have let the enemy fill me with those lies, I wouldn't even have lived those moments, you know? Because it's literally that deep, that there's like minor things that happen that the enemy blows out of proportion, because there's a solution to everything. Everything has a solution. And even whenever, because my mom says that everything has a solution except death. But God is right there even with death. You know what I mean? God is still there. So that's why, like, whenever there could be big things and there can be minor things, but the devil tries to manipulate and make you feel that this is it.
And it's crazy because you went through that process and you felt bad about it, you know, but I feel like that process was necessary. It was necessary, and one day you're gonna help somebody else that goes through something like that, you know.
That's how I felt.
And it's beautiful. Like, I feel like these moments, like, they crush you, but God is close to the brokenhearted, you know, like, he allowed it to happen, you know?
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking, because there was many situations that I felt that could have happened, but why this one and why now? You know what I mean? So that's why, like, I feel like God always has a purpose to anything. It sucks. Like, who would want to go through it? But I just feel like I'm ready to see the blessing out of it. And I am living it, you know, being able to, like I mentioned, I have like a different POV with God now. Like, it's just like different, because there's this one song that I would hear it all the time, and it's called Algo está pasando aquí. No, wait, what's it called? Because I think it's sung both English and Spanish. But that song, it's like always sang in our district, and I would always hear it. And I played it in one of our Wednesday service, and it's called Algo está pasando by Oasis Ministry. And the lyrics, it kind of goes like, whenever God's spirit is, you know, entering, there is freedom. Like, where God's spirit is, there is freedom. And whenever God's spirit is there, the demons are fleeing. So it made me feel where it's like I lifted, you know, like I lifted. There was a moment where instead of, like, I could have done anything else, and what I did was put a worship song. And so I felt that in that moment, I felt so surrounded by darkness that whenever I put that worship song, it was like the demons had to flee. You know? And in those moments, sometimes you still don't feel it, but God is working. God was working in that moment. So that's why, like, it's beautiful, because whenever I hear that song, it's like I literally lived it. You know? So that's why I said, like, certain situations take you to a different, you know, dimension with your relationship with God. Like, you can still, and even this, there's gonna be moments where I'm still going to go deeper. Like, this is not even it, you know? So it's like beautiful being able to live now like a different, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's the thing. Like, God allows us to go through these things to help us grow and elevate us, you know? And it's necessary. And I wanted to say that God allows us to go through these things like He already forgave you, you know? I feel like sometimes when we're going through these things, we want to feel down and we want to stay down, you know, because we're like, well, I'm not worthy. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
did this, like, I'm not worthy, you know? But God already forgave you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is already forgiven.
Yeah. And
He
it's
paid the price on the cross, you know?
And it's funny that you said that because I don't know if you remember in our season 1, I think it was the episode of endurance. I talked about a snippet where I said that I was driving here to film the podcast and I had an encounter with God. And in that moment, He told me, He was like, I forgive you. And He hugged me. He was like, I forgive you. And it made me realize that I needed to hear it for what was to come, you know, because He didn't say it after the situation. He said it
Yeah.
before the situation because He knew that I was going to need that reminder
Mm-hmm.
that I was already forgiven,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just like crazy how God works. And it is kind of crazy that He presented it beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It's
So,
also crazy because I feel like we go through these things and we feel guilty, you know,
yeah.
because we know we did wrong.
Yeah.
So we do feel guilty,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah. 100%.
but like He already forgave us
Yeah.
for everything. Like
Yeah.
we have a clean slate. When God looks at us, He sees His blood. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like we are cleansed, you
Yeah.
know. Obviously, don't go and take advantage of God's
yeah.
grace because He knows our hearts, but don't allow that moment, don't allow those feelings to keep you down because we are already forgiven. And I feel like sometimes we don't know that, you know. Coming into the church, we don't know that we're already forgiven, you know. And it reminds me of that one podcast that you were watching, that the guy said that he was always asking God for
Yeah.
forgiveness, you know,
Yeah.
like we're already forgiven.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not aware of that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's how the devil takes advantage of that situation because lack of knowledge, you know. He just like, oh, like God's not gonna forgive you, like you did this, you know. That's how He is. That's the thoughts that He puts in our minds, like, oh, well, you already did this, like, you know, you're not worthy, you know. He throws all these things, and if you listen to Him, if you feed the thoughts, like, you stay down. And that's not, like, He literally already paid the price.
Yeah.
It's not worth it, you know. Get back up and keep going.
Exactly. So I was trying to look in my notes because I had wrote something while I was driving here. A thought came into my mind, but for some reason I cannot find it. Maybe along the line I will find it, but it was just kind of like saying that I know how I've lived a moment of being completely shattered, but I also lived a moment of seeing God restore every single little piece in me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, whenever glass breaks, there's always like the tiniest ones that sometimes you can't even see. God put those little
Yeah.
tiny pieces back into place. So that's why, like, you know, if I say that if I can do it, you can literally do it as well. But also don't be scared of the withdrawals. Just like with
Yeah.
anything, there is withdrawals. Because I remember there was this one time that the entire day I was just feeding those memories, I was feeding those thoughts. And then at night in my prayer, I was telling God, I'm so sorry. Like, I felt so guilty. I was like, I'm sorry, but I need your help. I forgot specifically what I was praying, but I was just kind of like asking Him. I was kind of pleading to Him. I was asking for forgiveness. And literally the next day I fasted. And so every time I fast, I always put a preaching while I get ready. And that preaching literally was like God speaking every single little detail that I prayed that night.
Wow.
Like, it was just kind of like, I don't know, like it was just so weird. Like, if that preacher heard in my exact prayer, but it was God, you know. But it's crazy because it's a preaching that of like 3 years ago,
Yeah, no, that's the thing.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Like God's word never comes back
Yes,
void, you know? Like it
exactly.
doesn't matter who the
Yeah,
vessel is. Like it's
exactly.
God's word and
Yeah,
it's never going to come back void.
exactly.
Like even if we're not living right,
Yeah,
God's word is God's word.
yeah,
And it's just crazy
yeah.
cuz like 3 years ago like
Yeah, I know. Imagine. So it's just kind of like, and it was, and the funny thing is that it was called withdraws, and so I was like, oh, let me click on it, and it was literally God like answering back everything,
yeah.
telling me like, hey, it's okay. Like he literally said like you're going to have those moments of withdrawal, and it's part of the detox. Just like anything,
Yeah.
whenever someone wants to leave a substance, there's going to be moments where you're still going to crave it. There's still going to be
Yeah.
moments where you want to go back to it. Like it's normal. Why? Because the end, like the flesh, like it just has its way of like, like sometimes it thinks that it needs it,
Yeah.
but I feel like if you push through that, then it's part of the detox. You're just literally making your body being detoxed, and that's also spiritually. So you have to also detox your spirit, and you also have to detox your mind. But it's just like I also wanted to include that in to let you know that sometimes you won't be perfect in the process, and it's okay. Like don't feel
Mhm.
guilty about it. Don't let that hold you back, and don't let that hold you back of your healing and of your process, because you're gonna think, well, I'm already failing, so I'm just gonna go back. Like I just
Yeah.
wanted to say like, hey, like no, keep on going. There's going to be those withdrawals, there's going to be those moments, but just keep on going, and it's part of the
That's
process.
so crazy that you say that because today um I was in the car and the Joy in the Morning song by Torrin Wells was playing
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, don't you give up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's talked about the verse in Psalm 35 and it says, for his anger endureth but a moment, in his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And
Yeah.
it's like yeah, you're crying, it's hard, but joy comes in the morning. Don't stay there, like joy comes in the morning.
Yeah.
Get up, don't
Yeah.
give up, keep going,
Yeah.
It's crazy because
Yeah.
when you were talking about that, it just reminded me. And it's crazy because I like posted the Bible verse. I don't know if you saw it, but I literally posted the Bible verse because I was listening to the song and I just felt the Holy Spirit. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just felt him in the car, and I was like, I need to post this.
Yeah.
But that's so true,
Yeah.
like it's so important to be willing, to sacrifice your desires because I feel like yeah, God is going to give you the desires of your heart, but I feel like sometimes like we're trying to hold on to these desires that are not of him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I guess it's just like surrendering your desires. Like it's really, really hard, but I feel like the moment that you do, like everything changes,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's so hard. I'm telling you from experience, like it's hard to surrender things that you want to do, but that aren't necessarily pleasing God. It is hard, but it changes everything, And it shows God that you're all in. It shows God that this is not more than what you have going on with him. You're
Yeah.
willing to be like, you know what, you're more important than this right here that I
Yeah.
really want, that you're
Yeah.
asking me to give up, but I don't want to, but you are more important,
Yeah. Exactly. And then like with you mentioning that, it brought me back to the thought of like sometimes like God is like asking you, are you going to let it have a hold on you, or are you going to shake it off
Yeah.
and let God do the healing? And so that's why like there's moments where like we let it hold on to us, because I don't know, like I feel like there's people that feel like this gives them value,
Mm.
that this gives them, the comfort that they need, or they feel that this is it and all that. But if you just like shake it off and let it go, like you're going to see how it is. It's like how it is better to live healed instead of trying to, still consume that poison, if that makes sense,
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like sometimes these things that we want so badly like are only hurting us.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're hurting us
Yeah.
and we're so consumed in wanting this so bad and pursuing it and chasing it that we don't see the hurt that it's causing, you know?
Mhm.
And it's I feel like it's so important to ask for discernment, because I feel like discernment allows you to see before going through a process. God shows you, so you have the wisdom and
Yeah.
the discernment to not get yourself into that situation, you know?
Mhm.
And I feel like if we don't have discernment, like, we go through the situation, which,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, you learn and you grow, you know,
Yeah.
but it's better to avoid it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's important. We have an episode on discernment if you want to look at that. But I feel like, I mean, yeah, because like I remember when they're like, pray for discernment, I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
But I feel like I have seen how God has kept me from situations, and I didn't realize that it was discernment, but it is discernment. Like, it's God, like, don't do that, you
Mhm.
know? And sometimes I look like the party pooper. I look like the person that's like, I'm not doing that, you know? Or I'm like, maybe y'all shouldn't do that, you know? But I feel like I'm very grateful because God allows me to see further, you know?
Yeah.
He gives me that wisdom, and I feel
Yeah.
like he can give you that, you know. Just ask him and be willing, you know, to see. And I feel like with that, like if you ask for discernment, like, you have to be willing to sacrifice things you want to
Yeah.
do, you know,
Mhm.
if you're allowing him to lead you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Like, but if you're not willing to sacrifice your desires, like, he's not gonna lead you because you're not willing to give it up,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So I feel like it kind of goes full circle. Like, be willing to give it up and ask God to give you discernment, and he's going to lead you and help you navigate through your life, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's good. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, like I
Were
feel
you
like
loading?
yeah, I was I was loading.
You're letting it marinate for a
Yeah.
little.
No, yeah. But yeah, like I feel like you know, just I would say like yeah, like ask God for discernment because there's so many situations that you could avoid. So tell him, you know, help me to discern without having to get hurt. You know, because sometimes there is moments where people have to get hurt in order to know the consequences, but God is there to also help us avoid the situation. So tell God, like, help me avoid these situations without having to get hurt. And then also don't let go of your armor. Every single day you need to have your armor fully loaded, because if you just leave a crack open, the enemy takes full advantage of that and he just barges right in. You know.
Yeah.
And also, oh, another thing, don't keep things a secret, don't keep things in the dark.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that because
That's such a good point. How do you forget that one?
because now I'm just remembering that whenever I was telling Crystal about this, I had told her before anything happened, I had told her a little something, and
She
then
gave me a little sprinkle,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
and so that's why like Crystal never thought about asking me about
I
that.
feel like I couldn't. It's because if you don't say the truth,
Yeah.
like, you can't get help.
Yeah, you can't get help. And how can Crystal know? How could she pray for me if I didn't tell her about it? Because
I need the
after-
details. I'm sorry.
Because after it happened, she was like, "What? Really? What?" You know, like she was like, "How did and when did this even happen?" You know, and I told her
Yeah.
it's because I kept it a secret. You know, and I feel like don't keep things a secret and don't keep things in the dark, because that's what the enemy wants. He wants you to keep it hidden. And because imagine if I would have told, you know, maybe, you know, there is moments that even though they tell you like, hey, don't do it, sometimes you still do it. But I
Yeah.
feel like in my situation, I know that if I would have told them, they would have like quickly like prayed for me, intercede for me. They would have quickly told me like, absolutely not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And that's the thing, like, if you keep things in the dark, like, you need to discern in that moment. Like,
Mhm.
God is not a God of
Yeah.
secrets. He's not a God
Yeah.
of keeping, like,
Yeah.
not saying the truth, you know? And that in itself is your sign. Like, okay, if I'm having to not say the truth, like, if I'm having to keep this a secret, like, maybe that's not from God,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
from God.
Yeah.
Because, like, he's not a God of
Yeah.
hiding. He's not a
Yeah.
God of, like, secrets. That's
Yeah.
not who he is, you know?
Exactly.
And if you feel like you're in a situation where you can't necessarily be open about it, then maybe that's not it,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a little straightforward, but
Yeah.
that's just, it's the truth, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Yeah. So bring it to light, by bringing it to God. And
Yeah.
then if you have those people that can be there for you, people that intercede for you, tell them, because because like you really need those people to pray for you, to be even like interceding. It's like
Mm-hmm.
such a huge thing for you
Yeah.
to be able. So that's why like I pray, like whatever I don't know about this person, bless that situation. Put your hand over that
Yeah.
situation.
And I feel like it's so important to tell the truth, because I feel like sometimes we don't want to say the truth because we're afraid of being judged, you know?
Yeah.
But like, you cannot get help if you don't tell the truth, you
Yeah.
know? And even if you feel weird about coming to a person, tell the truth to God.
Mm-hmm.
He already knows the truth.
Yeah, just the fact by telling God I can't do it and just being raw with him that right now I'm desiring this more than you.
Mm-hmm.
That's him being like, okay, thank you for being honest. Now let me help you.
And it's like you open that door to freedom. You open
Yeah.
that door to
Yeah.
peace, you know,
Yeah.
because you're admitting
Yeah.
that, okay, this is wrong and I
Yeah.
need help, you
Yeah.
know, or
Exactly.
I like this feeling and I know that it's not right. You know, you're admitting, you're like, it's like you're repenting in a way, you know,
Yes.
you're like
Yeah.
acknowledging that you're wrong and you're asking for help, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's really important. It's really important to tell the truth, you know,
Yeah. Exactly. So that's
even
why.
if it's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
didn't judge you,
Yeah.
you know. I was like, girl, I need to know these things
Yeah.
so I can help you, you know.
It's true. Yeah, that's true. That's why like I feel very grateful to like my mom, because obviously it's a little like shy, like telling them that hey, like I failed in this
Yeah.
aspect, like it's not easy. And so that's why like I'm very grateful, just like I mentioned, that I have those friends that I can just be honest with, and that God gave me the courage to even say something as well,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's why it's like a little crazy, but God is there. God is there. His hand is there. Nothing is too big for God, and nothing scares God. And, he just wants to help you. He just wants to help you. And so, like I pray, I pray about that. Like, I pray that you guys have the strength during those trials. I pray
Yeah.
that, for you to let God in during those trials, during those broken moments, during those, that process of healing, because he wants us to heal, but then there's moments that we go back to our situation. So that's why today we have to declare like, I am getting healed, but I want to stay healed from this as well, So that's why, be strong, be courage, be brave, and you will see the blessings of just bringing the flesh down and letting God take a hold of you, the Holy Spirit,
Yeah, and God literally will be your strength in these moments. Like, I feel like sometimes you feel like, well, how can God help if like he's not here, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like he literally strengthens you. I don't know how to explain it, you know? He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But he strengthens you, and he gives you strength that you never even knew you had in you, to keep moving forward, to overcome these things that you never thought you would ever be able to overcome, you know? And I feel like if he did allow you to go through something, like, it's for a purpose. And remember that. Keep that in your mind all the time, and be like, okay, like, he allowed me to go through this. Like, I get to grow from this, and it's a privilege to be able to gain wisdom from a mistake, you know? Like,
exactly. Yeah, it does feel, that's the part that I love, being able to grow that wisdom and that knowledge, because I was thinking of head. I was like, I'm excited to know that if there's like a young person, because by that time I'll be older, married, possibly, who knows, but if there's like a younger person, that is going through that certain situation, it's going to feel good for me to know that they can go to me, because they're like, that won't scare her and she's been through that situation. So I feel like that's what kind of gives me peace, because it's like, I haven't mentioned it, but in the future I have, God gave me this like beautiful, prophecy that I'm going to be in ministry. So being in ministry, you have to have a love for people. You have to, be there for people. So that's why like me going to the situation is going to feel good for someone to say like, hey, my leader, I can go to her because she won't judge me. She's going to know exactly how I felt in the situation. And it's good to know that they can have that freedom to come to me instead of someone that can give them a bad advice. You know what I mean? Like going to the world, because I feel like those certain situations, it's easier to say it to someone that's not in the church than to say it to someone that's in the church.
Yeah.
You know, because you feel like
the person in the church is gonna judge you, you know?
Exactly, you know. So
but the thing is, we all go through things. Like, who would have thought that I was a pothead, you know? Like, what? You know, but I feel like that's why I'm so open about the things I go through. And it's good that you're opening up, you know, because I feel like it's so important. Like, we're not perfect. We are nowhere near perfect. We're never gonna be perfect, you know? And like, God allowed me to live the life I lived. He allows you to live the life you have lived so we can help others. Like, that's the whole purpose, you know? So why are we trying to hide this person that we used to be? Like, why are we trying to pretend to be something we're not? Like, just be real.
Yeah.
That's it. Be real.
Exactly. No, yeah. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. And, you know, like this video, share this video, leave any comments down below, leave any prayer requests down below. You can also send us a direct message through our Instagram. We also have TikTok. And for audio listeners only, we do have Spotify and Apple Podcast. We love you guys so much. And until next time, bye guys.